Why did Obadiah mention that the arc reactor was an unprofitable and useless project? It definitely had uses. But the problem is it's a one point of sale. That's not profitable for corporations, when it likely costs several times that of any other type of energy source, and it only had to be installed once versus a renewable subscription model. Edit. Golly gang. I was just being dystopian. Didn't mean to spur a debate on reality versus the comics. The other drawback being it wasn't cost-effective. Clearly, it costs a shit ton to build based on his comments. Probably similar to how expensive the upfront costs of nuclear are. What everyone is missing is also because Obadiah was trying to provoke Tony into giving up how he built it in a cave with a box of scraps. If you insult someone who has an ego the size of Tony Stark, they'll tell on themselves. It was unfinished, right? Tony finished it after he made the new element, and it became much more sustainable. He even used it to power the Stark Tower, and later on the Avengers Tower. Well, they were an arms company at the time. Nobody wants clean energy. Avengers 2012 had a line that sounded like a throwaway, but it established the limits of the arc reactors. The one powering Stark Tower would power the building for 1 year, according to Bruce's estimation. Tony's rebuttal is that it's a prototype to prove the concept works, but he deliberately evades any mention of its cost. That tells us that a refurbishing of some kind has to take place at least once a year in order for the arc reactor to function properly when used on an industrial scale. Just look at how the oil and gas companies regard clean, waste-free sources of energy in the real world, and there's your answer. It's not profitable because the oil industry does everything it can to prevent people moving forward. Yeah, it is capable of powering an entire factory. But for how long? How many workers are needed to keep this thing up and running? What if it fails for a few days? That could cost millions to Stark Industries while they scramble around to fix the problem. So to answer the question, it was probably not very reliable and just used as a publicity stunt to shut up the hippies. Tony Stark made it very reliable and miniaturized it in a cave. He says it wasn't cost-effective, so it costs more money to build and operate than it makes in generating electricity. Imagine a nuclear reactor that could power a city cleanly for 10 years. But it costs $20 billion to build and operate each year, whereas a regular fossil fuel plant costs $2 billion for the same time period. People will take the pollution for that price difference. All numbers are completely made up, but used to make a point. If this is the original design, would it burn through palladium cores like Tony's miniature one did in Iron Man 2? So, hypothetically, it probably is powerful and useful, but palladium is an expensive and rare metal, so it makes sense with the added context of Iron Man 2. 'Cause they built that thing to shut the hippies up. Presumably, it needed palladium to run, like Tony's reactor, and it may not have been financially viable for most operators to procure the amount needed to run it at a profit. Stark Industries probably just absorbed any lost or was able to offset it by the electrical generation savings it provided for their extreme energy needs. Alternatively, it used more space or other resources to be a better option than conventional power sources. Either way, Howard knew how to make it more efficient, but if you give people a way to have unlimited energy, that means you can't sell them energy anymore. It's been a minute since I saw the Iron Man movies, but Darcy Howard was the one who started the arc reactor project, but couldn't finish it because he was unable to stabilize the reaction. After Howard's passing, they shifted to arms manufacturing, but kept the project alive as a PR shield to feign that they were still trying to produce clean, sustainable energy. The problem with clean, sustainable energy is that there's not a lot of profit to be made compared to selling weapons and ammunition. You have to remember that it was missing a key part, the element that Tony discovered in the second movie. So, I think this was a way to set up that the design is flawed or incomplete. Like it should output a certain amount of power, but doesn't, and no matter the tinkering it never will. So it's a failure or a dead end. Still, by making it tiny and portable, the pros outweighed the cons. As underperforming as it might be, if it's handheld, it's a breakthrough because there is nothing that puts. The arc reactor needs palladium, which isn't cheap. Or the energy would be so cheap they couldn't make money from it. There are costs to development, construction, and then the benefit of the output. Even though it might be able to produce power forever, it can't produce unlimited power. So you'd need a unit for each defined capacity. If you already have energy available through the grid, this is not necessarily a justified expense. My electric bill for a semi-detached house is about 2.5 thousand Canadian dollars per year. Quebec has the lowest energy costs. A solar panel setup for my area is $25,000. So a 10-year payback period because it wasn't actually powering the building until Iron Man 2. It was just a showpiece. Because Obadiah was an obvious Republican. It's a curing cancer versus treating it thing. They make so much more money by keeping on treating cancer than just outright curing it. The world is a fucked up place. Looks careful. The obvious answer is that operational costs put its price above other power sources. If it costs twice what a natural gas turbine does to generate the same amount of power, it's going to lose money even if it has less externalities. I find it interesting that the arc reactor's design is the inside of a tokamak under glass. It has to be some species of cold fusion if the internal temps are below the melting point of glass. You do understand he was making a joke, right? He was being sarcastic. It's a question of scale. The closest real thing to an arc reactor is a tokamak, an experimental fusion reactor. Just over 30 exist, with another 30 older ones out of operation. By comparison, the Global Coal Plant Tracker estimates that there are more than 2 million coal-fired power plants in operation as for January 2026. The same way a hybrid that costs $20,000 more than its gas counterpart is not cost-effective over the lifetime of the car if it gets you 50 miles per gallon over 40 miles per gallon. It was also not effective in large format. It needed to be miniaturized, which only Tony knew how to do. Plus new element.